Hello, internet and guy sitting right. Where are you? Sitting right there, I guess, on the engine. Hello, my name's John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, a 10-year user of R for normal, standard, boring statistical applications, and for the last 7 or 8 years, actually, probably the majority of the time I've been using R. I've started to use it to wrap entire projects. So to create entire slide decks or papers or technical reports, all within the same authoring platform as I'm using for an analytical platform. And so every week I hang out with my friend here on the engine, and some other people occasionally stop by, but we just use the metaphor of an academic office hour, and we're literally open. If anyone in the world is interested in doing this and wants to know how to do it, how to get started, if you have an idea and want to bounce that idea off some people, we're here for that. Although maybe we're not going to be needed for very much longer because AI is taking over everything. So anyway, we're just here and we wanted to offer a resource to people who are interested in doing this that extends beyond the tutorials that are out there. And YouTube is fantastic for tutorials. AI is getting increasingly good at this as well. But we wanted to have an interactive opportunity. If anyone out there is interested in using these platforms, not just to do your analyses, but also to communicate the results of what you've done, all within one platform. And so we're here every week, and we'll just continue to be here every week. When I say we, it's me and a bunch of collaborators on projects. Now, most of those collaborators are former students of mine, master's and PhD level students, so they all have a similar psychology background, but we might extend that in the next few months here coming up. And certainly, if there's people out there who stumble across this and are also interested in proselytizing this, what I'm calling and what has been called literate programming, in terms of these reproducible research principles and standards that can be executed with increasing efficiency within these analytical platforms, drop me a note. I'd love to have some more people here to chat with. So anyway, so our main emphasis here is to be a resource if someone again wants to just bounce ideas or has questions. How do I get started? Or if you're stuck on a project, we're here for that. Again, with the metaphor being an academic office hour. Think of me as a professor who maybe doesn't have all the answers but can help you find the answers. It's kind of one of the ways I thought of myself when I was doing that kind of thing as a primary job. But so, in the absence of that, which is very similar to my experience in 20 years as a professor, I could probably count on one hand, maybe two, the number of times I had people take me up on my office hours. Wasn't very frequent. That either means I was very clear in class, which probably isn't true, or it means that there was something about me that, or there's a third option here, because for the first 15 or 16 years I was in an office at the top of a very non-traditional academic building, and it was a little scary. I had my own clawfoot bathtub. That's a story in and of itself. But so anyway, if there's no direct questions about how do I do this, what we've been doing is we've been covering features of these platforms that we're trying to not just do our analyses in, but also communicate the results of what we're doing within. And so last week, the feature that we looked at for the first time was an AI assistant. I think they just called assistants. So an artificial intelligence assistant that we integrated within our studio. Now, our studio is the IDE, or the way that the development environment that I have chosen to use when I author with R, when I do analyses with R, when I do anything with R. I do it within our studio. There's many options available now. Another couple that are quite popular for R specifically are VS Code, and then Posit has their own kind of edition of VS Code called Positron. Now, one of these weeks, I'll probably try out a different IDE as well. Or if one of my collaborators pops along and wants to kind of demonstrate that, that would be great as well. Diego in particular. Diego shows up most frequently, and I think he's played around with VS Code. I know because he does a little Python, and that environment is a little more popular with the Python users. The My experience with Python, I used kind of a an IDE that I don't think is very popular, but I loved it because it was so similar to RStudio. It was called Spider, and I don't think Spider is very popular, but you can use all kinds of different IDEs. We integrated GitHub Copilot, which is different from the Copilot that is currently assisting functions and capabilities within the Microsoft Office suite of products, things like Word and Excel. The GitHub Copilot is intended specifically for code completion. And so we played with that last week, and we're going to continue to play with that this week. So without further ado here, let's get into our transition into what happened last week.
You remember that last time we left Boris and Natasha confronted by the sinister shadow of Mr. Big himself, while Rocky and Bullwinkle were plummeting down a mine shaft followed closely by an enormous boulder. But our story really opens today in a quiet Washington office where Captain Peter Peachfuzz, head of G2, is speaking to his secretary.
Get me the file on Mount Flatton.
Yes, sir.
Wait! Aren't you forgetting, Miss Glum? Those are secret files! Close your eyes.
Then how can I see what file I'm getting?
Don't you use the touch system?
Well, I'll try. Let's see. It should be this drawer back about,
You're peeking.
Well, I'll just never find the information.
Then how do I know what's going on?
So I see Diego's here in the chat. So this is kind of interesting. So Diego, you can see what it's like from the other side now. I don't know if you've ever just looked instead of participated, but I'll be curious to see what your feedback is here. And I'm glad you're in the chat, so thanks for that. Of course, if you want to pop in, you're always welcome to as well, but I don't want to pressure anyone into doing that. And Diego's got a lot going on, by the way, so I just appreciate him chatting, if nothing else. I, I was gonna mention something. It just kind of slipped my mind. Hopefully, it pops back in if it's important. But last week, one of the things got no link. Let me quickly send Diego a link here. I wonder if I forgot. I may have forgotten to. I may have forgotten to send an invite to everyone, which is on me. I was really late this week. Putting my materials together. I've been doing a lot of non-work kind of things, and so that kind of got in the way. Usually, I get slides done for every week. I was kind of talking through me emailing Diego the link in case he wants to pop on. But I usually get everything done. Sometimes I get it done the day after because it's fresh in my mind and I'm like, let's do this new thing. This week, I didn't actually get the slides complete until yesterday, which is really late for me. By the way, the slides, if you look in the comments, the structure of the slides, these are always available with the date convention at the very end, separated by underscore. Look at that. Here he is. That was quick. Hey, Diego, I forgot your intro. I was just so excited to see you. Sorry.
Oh, hey, what's up? So the first thing I saw when I went on YouTube was you saying that students wouldn't show up to your office hours. I was thinking, well, maybe you didn't send them the link either.
Well, that's very possible. Yeah, but those were. Remember back in the day before COVID, if anyone remembers, or anyone can remember, or cares to remember, there were actual physical office hours. And so, yeah, I didn't have a lot
back in the
of
day.
back in the day, back before AI. So last week, Diego, I think you popped off before I was thoroughly confused with what was going on. But we were asking GitHub Copilot once we had it installed. We were asking it to help us with the Palmer Penguins dataset, and it kept telling us the code that it gave us was using variables that most obviously and very, very just there wasn't much doubt about it. They were not in our object. So it was specifying variable names and they weren't there in our object. Well, it turns out, upon reflection, I think I've stumbled across this before. So there's actually a penguins package in base R as well. And so what you see here on the left, this is just a bit of code that displays what's available in terms of packages in base R. I could just I could just take this, run it in my console. Let me do that just to show here what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and run that in my console, and then you saw that quick flash, and then you get a listing kind of in a weird spot. So you get this listing in a weird spot of packages that come built in with base R, and you're going to recognize some of these here that are very popular. The MT cars is quite popular. Iris, of course, for years was heavily used. Um, there is also a package in here called Penguins. And so the Penguins data set, if we go back into the presentation deck here, the Penguins data set that's included in base R is a little differently specified than the full Palmer Penguins package that's available that's available as an object within the Palmer Penguins package itself. And so that's where the difference came from in terms of the variable names. So the only reason I'm
So
talking about, go
it
ahead.
wasn't it wasn't hallucinating. It was just
Well,
reading the data set that was in base R.
so you remember that part, right? So that's what we were wondering is whether or not it's hallucinating. Now, Diego and I just had a research meeting on Monday, and I kept Copilot active in my our studio, and we saw some really weird hallucinations on Monday. And we're gonna try to. I think Diego, if you're okay with it, we're gonna try to replicate those tonight. So see if we can get it to show those hallucinations. Just as a reminder, what happened was it was a paper that we were writing. So it was a QMD document, a Quarto document that we were intending to turn into a manuscript. So describing the introduction, the research methods, the results, and a discussion. Um, and the way that these papers are written, well, I'll just wait. We'll wait until we get to it because we'll see if we can try to replicate it with a fresh document. But it was hallucinating. It was making up citations. So it was making up full citations with authors and dates and titles and journal names and volumes and issues and even page numbers that did not exist. And it was suggesting them to us.
You
Um,
were using just ChatGPT because there's like models that are specifically made for research. Like ChatGPT has deep research, and there's others. There's Linear, and they take a while to take. They can take up to 10 minutes or even more, but they typically are much more accurate. They don't hallucinate as much.
So that's one thing, Diego, if you're okay with it, while I go over some recap stuff, if you can take a look at the engine options that we have with GitHub Copilot. I know that we could do Claude, I believe, and we can do, I think it's Chat GPT. Now, I believe somewhere in this link, or it might be in a different link that I have, there's actually documentation of the different, what are they called, engines? I guess different engines that we could actually interface with that can power this. We're just using the default. We haven't played with that at all, but that's a very good point. That would be one thing tonight that we could play with and see if there's a difference in hallucination. I would love to do that.
So you can switch LLMs. Like
At least two. I know you can do at least two, and I'm not sure if you can do more. But if you don't find it, we'll just ask AI that. we'll see if we can get the AI to actually tell us. Um, so anyway, the penguins thing was that was something that we had to resolve between last week's session and this week's. And again, it was caused by me having a newer version of R installed, and I did not have the Palmer Penguins package installed locally, which normally I would, but I didn't. So when we ran our code, the library just threw an error that I didn't notice, but it still picked up the penguins object because there's a penguins data object in base R as well as within the package, which wasn't loaded for us. So it's kind of messy. But anyway, that's what happened there. And the unfortunate thing is the variable names look very similar, and the data itself looks very similar. So it, it, the it got confusing. And like I said, I think I remember having a similar issue before. Um, but it's an unfortunate reality that that name is shared by the more popular Penguins data set that's within the Palmer Penguins package itself as well as base R. I don't know which came first. Let's ask AI. That'll be one of the first things we ask is we'll ask AI. Now, one of the limitations last week was the AIs were telling us that we were wrong. The AIs were telling us, no, these are the variable names because they were obviously pulling them not from our environment locally, but they were pulling them from their knowledge of the Palmer Penguins package, which they assumed that we had loaded, which we hadn't. So there's going to be some limitations here. Obviously, the thing I guess that I was most interested in was the capability of this assistant to read what you have locally in the context of your project and generate suggestions that are largely they can't be derived from that, but largely referencing that, I guess. And so we definitely saw a limitation there, which is kind of fun. I mean, that's the purpose of doing this is let's see what it can do. Let's see what maybe it's not so good at. Now, when I was creating this tab here, the bit that we actually did last week, usually I would put in some screenshots here. I got a little lazy, decided not to. But as I started to create this bulleted numbered list, the Copilot assistant gave me line by line suggestions. Now, I mostly accepted these. I typed in one, create an account, and let me show you once again just the code where that is. These Reveal.js slides that you're seeing, it looks a little, the first time you see these, if you're not using this frequently, it looks a little intimidating. It's really not. Mine just happen to be overpacked with content. So I typed this, create a, and then I put in some, little links and logos and things. But if I were just to, at the end of this, kind of give myself a hard return, it's going to give me some options so we can test it. Let's see how far it goes. Explore Copilot's capabilities. Okay. And that's almost marketing, right? Provide feedback. Okay, how do I provide feedback? Because that's not something that I've seen before, but we might come back to that. So that's how it kind of gave suggestions here. And if we go back to our slide, the suggestions that it gave after I gave the first one, which was create a GitHub account, and then kind of directed it a little bit. I think I kind of typed number 2 and then it auto completed it for me. There's links on here for how to do these things, but you do need a GitHub account first if you want to use this AI assistant. And then there is kind of a upgrade to the account. It's $10 a month if you don't have an association with a university or an educational institution. If you do, you should be able to get their lowest tier free version. The link that I put on here, the request access, should take you to a 30-day free trial link. It won't work for me because it auto recognizes that I'm on me and I have an account. So, but the link itself takes you to a 30-day free trial as long as you don't, I think it's as long as you don't have an account. Or maybe that's number one. One of those hyperlinks is going to be different for some of you than it is for me. And then we spent a lot of last week walking through the steps to get Copilot to be operative within our studio. And then, and then it gave these kind of marketing type suggestions, which is start coding. At least it didn't say start coding with Copilot's excellent suggestions or Copilot's, I don't know, unbeatable suggestions. The thing that it did say that I did a little following up with because I was curious about this, but it said use Copilot's features like code completion, suggestions, sure, we saw that, and a document generation. Now, document generation is something that I'm keenly interested in, and the whole point of having these weekly open office hours is to get other people interested or maybe building skills a little bit using these using R for the purpose of document generation. So I did some interaction with the Copilot AI itself, and I did it on GitHub itself. So there's a couple of different ways to interact with it. Last week we interacted with it within our script. Over the course of the last week, I interacted with it on GitHub in my GitHub account, and maybe I'll show you that that as well. But I was very curious about this. I'm like, tell me more about this, and it turned out to be kind of. It's not that it was hallucinating, but maybe it just wanted a third thing to say. When I first started writing, I think this was in college, in my first exposure to college when I was an undergraduate, probably high school through that. I remember writing lists of things, and I would always put a third one on there. Now I wonder if this LLM is doing the same thing. So completion and suggestions are probably sufficient and exhaustive of what it wanted to say, but the structure of, when you write in a sentence like this, you usually say A, B, and C. That's just kind of an English structure thing. But so the document generation, I was what I thought it might be referring to and what it was referring to, it was a bit of a letdown. So it's not that this is a built-in kind of something that it's aiming toward. I think it's just kind of thrown in there as a third, hey, this too, without a lot of thought in terms of what those two words mean or might mean together. Okay, so I think one of the things we'll do is we'll take a look at that. I'm going to ask AI about that, and I'll show you how to interact with the Copilot chat option outside of the our studio ID. Now I put Mr. Yuck on there because I did not have a great experience last week with this, and I think part of the frustration was that Penguins data set that was pulling from base R and not the Palmer Penguins package. But just first impression experience, kind of user experience, the way that I do things, like I wasn't loving it, which isn't entirely fair because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it enabled for, I don't know, a couple of months at least. And there's little tweaks I can do, and we'll talk about those tweaks, I think, as well. That'll make it less kind of not as fun, I guess. Intrusive maybe is not exactly the word I'm looking for, but it was a little intrusive. So there are little tweaks I can do. So I'm going to leave it up for a couple of months, and then I'll probably come back and do one of these Tuesday sessions with a more informed kind of presentation, and okay, this is how I've been using it, and this is what I like, and this is what I don't like. But for today, I thought we'd head back into the AI world and play with it a little more earnestly. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you first. Let's do that document generation. I'm going to go to GitHub, and we'll look for the chat. Now I have again on my account. I requested and I have access to Copilot. So I on my account I have this little Copilot button in the upper menu tab, and so the chatbot just appears here, and so I can say, what was it? Document generation. Say, how can Copilot help with document generation? For example, a Quarto. Let's just say presentation. No, what's a better way to put it? A Quarto. I don't want to say document again. A Quarto HTML page. Let's just try that. I kind of like, so one of the things we noted last week was it could be more like the old Microsoft Office paperclip dude that used to bend around and jump around and kind of annoyingly. But I found that annoying, but I thought I might find it interesting here. So again, we're really interested in this document generation aspect, but when it says it can help in several ways, the auto completion and suggestions, again, I think that's kind of what we saw is the primary features and primary functions. Code examples, yes. Now, function and API docs. Okay, so that's something I guess that's a little more specific anyway. Structuring Quarto pages. Now, I think that we'll test this out tonight. So we'll test out the YAML front matter. So that'll be something that can definitely help. Section templates. This is just going to be headings. It sounds like Quarto specific features. Here's what we are interested in. And again, this isn't all that surprising, but it's probably going to be more, the intent of this is going to be more tailored toward traditional analyses than document generation. So can help write code chunks. Yes, we know that. Interactive elements, that would be no different. That's also code chunks. It's just going to be Plotly or Shiny Code or or we went over a few of these options. DY graphs have interactivity. Plotly has interactivity. Leaflet has a lot of interactivity, so that sort of thing. Converting, we don't need a lot of help converting. It's a single statement in the YAML. HTML page starter, so we'll check that out. Continuous improvement, I guess I'm not sure what that means. So let's see what's going on here. So we didn't give it a language either, so we didn't say what we're actually that we were interested in using R for this. But it looks like it's giving us little starter code, which our studio gives us anyway. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be all that helpful. Although I'm going to copy this little bit here because there's a tip and it says to get the most out of Copilot for documentation. And it's probably just going to say be good with your annotation because that's what all the reference sites that I've seen seem to say. Make sure to be good with your commenting. Now, I guess we didn't do a project last week. Is that right? So we must have. Let me look at my files and see if there's something here. Palmer, most likely. Yeah. Okay. So this is what we played with last week. I'm going to close out of this project. Actually, I'm just going to close out of our studio altogether. And we'll come in with a fresh session. And I'm going to open that Palmer file. So last week this was our what are you talking about? We don't have the same variable names that you have. Um, but I think we want to, I want to paste in here, and let's just get rid of what we have. I want to paste in here what was in the chat bot. We don't need that. That's the standard AI. If you want more, let me know. Tip to get the most out of Copilot for documentation: start writing your QMD file with a few headings and code comments. Copilot will then suggest completions and content tailored to your project. Okay, so let's actually do that. So I'm going to close out of the script because I think what we want is do we want a presentation or do we want a document? Diego's gone. Let's do a document. I think we want to demonstrate what this might end up looking like for something like a technical report. So the difficulty here is there's not really space in these QMD files for comments. We almost have to put in a code chunk. And I don't know if that code chunk is properly placed where we have it right here. But let's try it. The other thing we could do is sorry, that was just accidentally hit the page down button. We could try putting comments in here, but that these often comments in the YAML often mess with the ability of your document to render. So let's just run this first and we'll try it both ways. The other thing, I'm going to wait for Diego, I think, on this, but I'm going to make a note to myself because the other thing that we were going to check out, or I wanted to, before we put this to bed in terms of waiting on Copilot for a couple of months to come back to it, is we are at some point, either tonight or soon, gonna have to take a look at this package called Chatter. And so Chatter is, I think I have it pulled up here. Chatter is a package that enables interaction with LLMs. The main vehicle is a Shiny app that runs inside the RStudio IDE, and it's more of the back and forth kind of chatbot interface. And so this is something that I think we definitely should take a look at. It might, for someone like me who's just getting used to using AI in general, not just for finding out how to, I don't know, how to tie your shoes. I mean, I know how to tie my shoes, but if I wanted to learn how to tie my shoes now and I didn't know how, it might be something that I go to AI for. What's another example? I go there now a couple of times a day. Actually, frequently I go there to ask questions about, is this possible within Quarto? So one of the things I wanted to do today, but I kind of ran out of time, was I was going to paste the Copilot recommendations for document generation into a hidden Reveal.js slide that I could link to. And so I asked Grok, the AI that I'm kind of most comfortable with right now, that's the Twitter one. I asked Grok if I could do that, and Grok said yes. And like all of these AIs, they all hallucinate to some degree, and so there's not 100% trust in it, but I'm quite confident that if I would have persisted, I would have been able to do that, but I just kind of ran out of time, and so I decided I probably don't need that content on a hidden slide. But Chat R should enable us to interact with these AIs in a manner more consistent, more similar to something like an online Google type interface. And so, did it change? It's telling us what Quarto is. I didn't realize that. I thought we left it here. So Chatter, I think, is something that we're going to want to take a look at. And we probably don't have time tonight. So this might bleed into a third week looking at GitHub Copilot. But let's see if we can actually give it some context within the YAML, fully expecting this to blow up. So before I just started rambling there, I meant to actually just render this, make sure it first renders before we mess with the YAML, knowing full well that it may not render as nicely at that point. And so what are we doing? We're going to try a report. So we'll just call this report example. No, we'll just call it report. I don't like long titled names. I don't know why I've been doing
Report final two.
that. So you and I never dealt with that, Diego, because we were by the time you came around, we were already using GitHub for version control on anything. But did you ever have professors who did that? Who would send you who would send you back, you know, feedback on a paper, and it would be exactly like you said.
Yeah, when I worked with Dr. Dan in
Don't out
the
anyone. Just say yes or no or what.
well, yeah, when I worked with a company, it was we would be sending back and forth code, and yeah, it would be named something like final two, things like that.
Yeah, it was
Final,
very
the finaling.
Son of the Finaling version 3, the Revenge of the Son of the Night of those. When I had, I don't even remember who introduced me to the GitHub workflow, but when I when I first, especially writing things. So when I first started making full papers within R, and then using GitHub, it was like thinking about the Stone Age when you had to think about like having that mess of a system and being terrified that that you said something epically important that would change the universe in an old version and you're gonna lose it. So instead of overwriting it, I have to call, this the version with a date on it. And I still collaborate with some people who kind of use that method, and it drives me nuts. I, on the other hand, I was never comfortable with fully going on to Google Docs, which you know it gives you a constantly updated version, but the tracked record of what you've done is a little more difficult to get back to. It's not visible. You can recover in most circumstances, but it's a little more difficult to get to. Anyway, so let's create a research report. Let's not use Palmer penguins. Should we try our own data set, Diego? Maybe just let's make a small one.
Yeah,
And
simulation maybe.
okay, we'd like to create a research report documenting the
And also, I looked up how to change the LLM,
yeah.
but there's nothing about RStudio. It's all about Visual Code and Visual Studio. But it says that you have to go to like two uh, options, and then there's a drop down menu that lets you switch LLMs. Not sure if that's the same for RStudio.
Okay. Well, again, maybe that's something that I'll take a look at in the next week here, and we'll
What if we
see.
just ask in the script?
You can try that. Um, Again, I think I have to put a chunk in here so I can get the comment line, and we'll use what we did last week. We'll try a question. How do I switch OMs that Copilot is sure? I'll try using.
Huh? It's not answering.
It's giving me echo as false,
It's
which
jealous. It's like,
is
no, not answering. Go ask that other LLM.
yeah. We'll put it down here. It still wants echo false. I I'll try it outside of. And again, the the chat R might be what we need to do um, because chat R is going to give us that interactive chatbot, uh, and we can ask it then. So okay, so that's one thing that we definitely want to do. But let's see if it can assist us with this report. Document. We'd like to create a research report documenting the analysis of a small data set. The report should be available. Let's try this in both PDF and HTML formats. So that's something that we'd be interested to see if the Copilot can help us with. And then maybe we'll just it ran. Okay, so it ran, but I'm not sure that it's going to pull that. If it's going to actually, okay. So maybe it did because it gave us both formats here. I'm just, yeah. Now, now editor visual. That's something that some people like. Diego and I both tend to not like that. Um, and these execute options, instead of going chunk by chunk, these are global, which is nice to have in the editor, but it's not giving us anything specific to our context. These are commonly uh, common values that people might want. And so warning, error, and message, it is nice to shut those off. Echo, we don't need to echo either. So the only difference here that we should see, um, if we render this again, is this 1+1 grayed out code should not be in our report at this point. So let's go ahead and render it again. Yeah, it didn't like two formats. So we'd have to ask it how to actually get both formats. And generally that's done something like this. But it's not, I don't think, I don't think this is going to work. If it does work, we're going to have our time finding these because it's not in a project folder. Okay, so let's come. That's that's something we can actually come back to uh, because I don't want to. I know how to do that on our own. We don't need AI for that. All right. Again, I'm not. I don't know, Diego. What do you think about this so far? It's just kind of annoying me at the time because it's not really helpful for what we're doing, and it's given suggestions that I don't want. But let's see if we can just start to write a little bit, and I'm taking out the
Uh,
content that's currently in there.
it cut off just when you were asking me a question. I couldn't hear it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my internet's shaky tonight. I think I was just saying I was asking maybe if you have any. I know it's on my machine, not yours, but if you have any impressions with what this is looking like or how it's operating. I'm not impressed. I've had more frustration with it than it's early. I understand, and I haven't watched any tutorials. I haven't. I'm just doing this kind of blindly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a good autocomplete is better than most of them, but yeah, to solve problems and actually write code, you might as well just ask Copilot, on the chat, and and then you just kind of modify the code as you see fit.
Now,
Having the autocomplete is like adding an extra step, right? Because now on top of asking the chat, you have to also ask the in the script itself, and it's just an extra step. That's what I think. But as autocomplete is good.
I mean, it's giving a lot of content, so that was all autocomplete. I just said chatter is. the chatter reference. Let's see if it pulls up the chatter reference. It says no completions available, so it's not finding anything on that. Um, let's ask it if we can put a bibliography in here. A bibliography that includes references in bibtec format. So now I'm wondering if wow, it's this is not helpful in the YAML, um, at least for what I'm trying to do. What I would like to do is put a bibliography in here. And it's saying what we should call it. We can call it that. That's fine. Um, now we're also going to need a file path for that since this isn't in a project directory. So maybe we'll come back to that one as well. Okay, so there it gave me something a little different. So let's see if that. I don't know why it didn't give us that before. Like thunk a little longer, and that extra thunking. Kind of gave us. So that is the proper. That is the proper help page. Now the actual citation of it. I forget how to cite directly. I forget how to cite directly. Let's see if we can use Copilot again and ask it, how do I request a bibtec citation of an R package within R? See if it gets this. It should just be to bibtec. Now, I wonder if to bibtec is a base function. I don't know if I'm limited here, but anyway, I'm finding this interface a lot more helpful. And again, this is kind of the interface that we should get if we use chat R. So maybe the next thing to do is to actually test out chatter or chatter. I don't know. What do you think, Diego? I think that because that should give us a box like this where we can, within our studio, just ask these types of questions a little more easily.
Huh, it creates like an interface in our studio
Yeah.
with the chatbot. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be neat.
Okay. Let me see. Let's try to install it just here within the next 10 minutes, and we'll see. And we'll see
Yeah,
if
that would be really neat if it can read your script, right? So you ask it questions about your script, and it can, debug it, help you debug it, and things like that.
so it's a utils package, but utils should be in there. What? Did I spell chatter wrong? Is it 2 R's?
Huh. No, it's two T's.
Let's pulling up ggplot. You sure we're not spelling that wrong? I know it's on crayon. We just saw it was on crayon. Let's see. Got too many. That's my one thing every week. I've got too many doggone windows open. How am I spelling that wrong? Chat or huh?
I had a professor that was very anal about pronouncing chi-square correct. He was like, it's not chi-square or key-square, it's chi-square.
I had a professor that was big on Likert's name. Likert, like Likert type indicators.
Yeah.
Yeah, he must have
But that's
heard.
that's everyone. Everyone either says liquor, like in alcohol liquor, or
Yeah,
liquort, or liquor.
he claimed to have some inside knowledge from someone who knew someone who knew someone that knew the correct pronunciation. But well, that's a little unfortunate. I wanted to do a citation, but again, we can come back to that. This 2BibTech looks like it's working for ggplot. I mean, we can try some just kind of very popular common packages. Maybe it's just not. So we'd have to look into that a little bit and see why it's not pulling cheddar. But let's see
Next
if we can.
week, next week I'm not gonna be here, but maybe the week after we can try this with VS Code or with VS Studio, because that one lets you seems to be you know there seems to be more resources about that for Copilot.
Yeah, it's all kind of intended for that. And I think it looks like Posit's kind of backfilling with our studio, and they're saying, "Oh, here's some resources if you want to do it as well."
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be leaving. So yeah. So Monday I won't be there either because I'll be on
Okay.
vacation.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll see you the week after.
All right. Have a good time. Yeah, and then I'll hold off and I'll touch base with you and see if you want to do that VS Code integration. And uh, I
Yeah,
think
I
that
can
sounds great.
host that.
Okay, that'd be fun. All right. Thanks, Diego.
Okay, bye.
Bye. So, um, it was nice of Diego to stop by. I think let's try. Let's see if we can get this. See if we can get this working. This chatter. Uh, I do have a help page here. I'll put it in the comments. And we'll see if we can get this done within the next 5 minutes here. Again, there's no. I don't have anything going on tonight. It's not a hard drop, but as we're just kind of exploring this, it's it's nice to break it up a little bit. So we run the app, it looks like, and underneath this, it sounds like this is a Shiny. Um, this is powered by Shiny, and it's thinking, so that's probably a good thing. Use chatter use to get started, so apparently we missed a step. And this reference page that I just put in the comments, maybe I should have checked it out before I put it in the comments. But looks like it's about a year old, so it's possible that this has changed a little bit. Let's ask Copilot again. I have permissions. We shouldn't need to do that. Try it on a Windows machine. Maybe I don't think so, but and this looks like it's powered by ChatGPT. Yeah, it's not it's not really helpful. Let's try a different AI. The battle of the AIs. Again, we're gonna start. Well, I shouldn't. I'm not gonna joke about things because if you see this, you know why. Because maybe that would be. Forget it. How do I install and use the package chatter within our studio? I already have the GitHub Copilot integration within my version of our studio. Grok seems to be really good at this. I don't know. I've really liked the suggestions that I've gotten to the point where I've said thank you, and then apparently you're not supposed to do that because that just takes up computing space. The initial feedback that it gives is useful just to make sure that it kind of summarizes what it thinks you're asking, and that's helpful. Um, so let's see. It looks enhancing your coding workflow, especially for exploratory data. Now, EDA, I'm not familiar with EDA. That apparently is a new thing, or maybe that's a hallucination as well. Here's the step-by-step guide. Yeah, we installed the package. Maybe we need to install it. Oh, we didn't. We shouldn't need to load the library because we already have this. This is shorthand for calling up the library. Um, Authentication. I'm guessing this is what we have not yet done. Uh, Chatter use. So maybe we do want that chat RR use that it recommended. So I'm gonna try this just empty and see if it recognizes our copilot. And again, I haven't looked at the documentation at all. So we'll take a look here. And it's saying model setup. And I'm just looking to see how Copilot might be specified here. I don't see. I don't see Copilot specified. I mean, um, the double quotes and things like capitalization are important here as well. Whoa, something happened there. I wonder if one of these is Copilot. And the reason I want Copilot is I don't want to have to authenticate these other ones. We should already be authenticated here. Mm. Should detect your authentication token automatically, which it didn't do. Let's make sure that we do have it enabled. We're pretty sure it's enabled because we've been using it. Not very effectively, but we've been using it. Enable, yes. I just refreshed it. I can't imagine that's going to have massive effect here. try the app again. And then, yeah, I'm gonna have to check this out offline. So next week, I think next week we will do one more of these. And yeah, these haven't been all that successful, I would say. First of all, the autocompletes that we're getting aren't all that helpful. Then trying to get chat R here just kind of on the fly is something that I'll have to look into and see what additional steps we need to take. I'd be willing to do it now, but I'm not sure if there's anything kind of outing me in terms of specifics, API keys and things like that that I would need to give it that would kind of be something I shouldn't be sharing. So I'll check that out. And next week, we'll probably focus on this chat R. The other thing we might do that we didn't get to do this week is to see some of those hallucinations. So I want to recreate hallucinations within these documents that we're trying to create. Again, just kind of a brief recap. The context we tried to provide, because this is a QMD file, not a script file, we tried to put in the YAML. It didn't seem to help all that much, although we didn't tweak it. So if we tweaked it, we could see if the autocompletes would change. But the autocompletes were really just based on things like headings that we have. So it was pulling, even if there's more context here. Gilligan's Island. Now, my expectation. Wow, I should have ended right before that.